Welcome to the SoulSeekR podcast. I'm your host, Sam Kabert. I started this pod back in 2019 when I was taking my first steps on the path of remembering. And at the time, the tagline for the show was a journey of self-discovery. A year later, it became a journey of remembering. Yet, what I know now is back then, I was still seeking. And what I've come to know now is that it's the journey of seeking that brings us the silent, slow stillness of acceptance. And therein lies our own innate wisdom. It's my mission now to eradicate the glorification of hustle culture, as it was my drive in entrepreneurship that led to a greater whole, and that's because I was outsourcing my sovereignty rather than looking within. So let this be your invitation to take a deep breath in and remember that at any time we can shift our thoughts and our feelings to create the outer world in which we wish to live. Soul Seekers, it's time to grow. Let's go. What is up, and welcome back to another episode of the SoulSeekR podcast. I am your host, as always, Sam Kabert, and in this episode, I am so honored, humbled, and excited to introduce you guys to my new friend, Bill O'Haron. We got connected pretty recently, to be honest, but we just really hit it off and we've been chatting a lot. He's a very talented man that's lived a lot of life in a lot of different aspects, from being in sales and business to deeply spiritual, having meditated for, I believe, like 30 years. And he's a counselor as well. And in this episode, we talk about some things like this entering of the Aquarian age, the cycles of Earth with epochs. But I'd say the general theme is just introducing you guys to Bill, because to be honest, sometimes every now and then there's guests that come on the show where I'm like, oh, you're going to be a regular guest. After having done this podcast for 6 years, about over 250 episodes, we're actually closer to 300 now at this point, that every now and then there's guests that come on multiple times, time again and again. So think of this as an introduction to Bill. He is also a board member of my new nonprofit called Soul Life Balance, where it's our mission to provide healing workshops for first responders. And that program's called Healing Heroes. And basically it's a one-day intensive workshop day with a breathwork journey and other modalities such as MER, mental emotional release, to overcome PTSD, that is. So super stoked that Bill is aligned with that mission, and excited for you guys to get to know Bill. If you want to go deeper with me, or if you're new to the SoulSeekR show, I highly recommend to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you enjoy this episode, the easiest way to give back to the show is by just leaving a 5-star review. Helps the show to grow. And if you would like to enhance your own meditation or breathwork practice, I invite you to join our free breath club. The breath club is my place and space for an online community to teach everything I know about nervous system regulation, is specifically through the modality of breath work, which helps us to enter into meditation and even reprogramming the subconscious mind. So if you're interested in that, hit the show notes and you can find out how to join the breath club. Other than that, enjoyed this episode. Here we are again for another episode of the SoulSeekR podcast, and I am really excited to speak with Bill O'Haron. We just met a few weeks ago and have been connecting quite a bit. It's been awesome. But as always, we're going to start with some breath. So Bill, for you, for me, listeners, as long as you're not driving or doing something where you can't close your eyes. Is that a double negative? Just don't close your eyes if it's not safe, put it that way. But of course you can breathe with us. So let's go ahead and shut down our eyes if it's safe to do so, and just gently shifting from the chaotic and busy outer world into the inner world. Feeling your feet on the floor, sitting straight up, and through the nose, inhaling all the way up. Sipping in a bit more air at the top. Audible sigh. Another big inhale, letting the belly expand, bringing that breath all the way up. Sipping in a bit more air at the top. Just gently rolling up the eyes. And audible sigh. And one last one. Inhaling all the way up. Sipping in a bit more air at the top. Hold and pause. And exhale, let it all go. All right, flickering the eyes back open, letting the breath return to its natural state and rhythm. And here we are. I've been so excited for this episode. Bill, how you doing, my friend? Nice to have you here.
Doing great. Anything that starts with three breaths is nothing but goodness, good stuff. So thank you. Love it. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, I appreciate you being here. And it's something I've been doing for a while on this podcast now, opening up with the three breaths. But I could feel myself in this one being like, I don't even want to slow down with breath. I just want to just get this over with just so we can get rolling. Either way, I do feel every time it helps to just settle my own I wouldn't call it nerves, but maybe excitement. Either way, though, shout out to Rob Nizelski for
Right.
connecting us. I'm so grateful. Yeah.
He was just
And
texting me. Yeah.
oh, yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, Bill, let's jump into it. So, for someone that hasn't met you before, isn't familiar with your story, your work, I mean, this is a question. If I ask you this, you can take the next hour just to answer this, right?
And
But
bore you and put everybody to sleep, especially if they're driving.
oh, I think this is going to be really exciting. I
Yeah.
don't. I think this is going to be one of those ones being where people are like, "Oh, this should have been like a 3 hour pod." But yeah, just give us a high level overview, if you will.
Yeah. Thank you. So, following the thread of that breath, somebody told me to do that breath back in March of 1996. I was 32. I was living in London. I was living the life of Riley, as they say. My outer world was good and big and bouncy and light. My inner world was dropping. My heart was breaking. Why? I have no idea. It just crossed through when you turn 29, 30, your brain starts millenniating. So things were changing. Old memories were coming up. I didn't know. I was miserable, losing my mind, stressed, breaking up with girlfriends. And my girlfriend said, you should do some therapy. And another woman said, you should breathe. And I did that breath for 45 minutes one day in March. And then I did it 2 weeks later, and my life's never been the same.
Wow.
Everything changed. I quit my job. I got my girlfriend pregnant. I've been to 46 countries, 47 countries, searching for, as they say, you search for the truth in the wonder. I've been to Machu Picchu. I've been to Nepal. I've been to, lived in London for 6 years. You find yourself at home. So I'm a sales guy during the day. I'm a relationship guy. With my wife and I wrote a book about relationships. Came out 4 years ago. I've been a licensed therapist, LCSW, for 18 years. Off and on, like I said, I've been in sales since 1986. And so I have a side hustle counseling practice. I have a day job where I raise a little bit of money. And my place in the earth right now is to be around other people that are interested in evolving and being more aware. And it's super exciting to be on Mother Earth right now. Very challenging time, but this is a new time, a new era. The Aquarian age is here, and it's the best time in 26,000 years to be on Mother Earth. And I start from there, try to start from there every day. So, therapist,
Mm.
dad, three kids in their 20s, married for 28 and a half years. I would say if I'm good at anything, is that I've been studying relationships for 24, 25 years. My son, myself. Harvard came out with a study. I'll be quiet in 1 second. Harvard came out with a study that they're still doing. It's a longitudinal study. It's called the Grant study. They came out with some results in 2016. And it said the most important thing in any human being's life is relationships.
Mm.
So when I read that, I'm like, do more work there. So that's me.
That is amazing, that study by Harvard, because that's something that I've been really saying over the past few years. Like, I believe that the hardest part of the human experience is our relationships, not just with others, but with ourselves. And I know in your book on your Audible sample, you mentioned this kind of like mirror work and seeing when you bring up that inner irritation coming from somewhere else, someone else. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. You know, I summed it up that when you get married or any relationship with your boss, doesn't matter. Just using marriage as the template. You're not married to the other person. You're actually married to your own reaction to the other person. You're married to what you think about women. You're married to what you think about men. You're married to your experience of relationship that you learned from your parents. And you're learning, all you're doing is the other is react. If you love somebody and they love you, that's where vulnerability starts building relationship. Relationships are built on vulnerability. They're built on me sharing with you something raw, hoping you give something back. But if you don't, that's perfect. So our relationship would stay where the least vulnerable place is. But you get vulnerable, I get vulnerable, and we deepen, we deepen. The challenge with relationship is, I just said this to my wife, funny enough, this morning. In order to read the room, in order for me to read you, to see the room, feel the room, I have to know my own sadness, my own longing, my own depression. What's the root of it? Just know it enough, because then when someone else walks in the room and they're feeling that, oh, I feel that.
Right.
Right? I know when my wife's in a bad space. And so I'm watching how I react. I'm trying to be present. So relationships are the hardest thing on the planet. There's nothing harder, period. Marriage, any relationship, friendship, we're always being triggered. My inner, so all the human reactive body of the adult was all built from 0 to 10 years old. It's all built. And really the next 90, 100 years is understanding it, unwinding it, and becoming aware. Oh, I still react to other guys being super successful and I'm modestly successful. Like, why can't I just be present? Because that's that competitive, immature boy in me. By the way, my thesis is men never really, really grow up. We do just enough, but maturity is vulnerability. And try to get men to be vulnerable, open up, cry, share. How do you feel about your mom? How do you feel? That's how relationships are built.
So men never really grow up. I know when you and I were first chatting, you were talking about elders. Could you relate that to like there being elders?
Yeah, so great point. I think once men cross through there, and not, it doesn't have to be necessarily an age, but once men become completely okay, kind of what we were talking about before we hit record. Once men become truly okay with their lives, they understand their vulnerability, they know what they're capable of, not capable of. It takes a while. Is it 50 years, 60 years, 70 years? It could be 20 years. Those elder men can really hold space. They can be part of the community. They can truly be mature, masculine, yang forces
Mm-hmm.
of wisdom. But still, there's always the little boy. No matter, whether it's Sitting Bull or Teddy Roosevelt. I mean, seeing all the documentaries, Patton, those are great, wise, Virgil, Dante, great, wise, incredible men, but they always had that longing. They always had that little boy longing, and they're always longing for mommy.
Mm-hmm.
Always. The mom mother dyad, it's one of the most wonderful, challenging, interesting relationship uh, dyads in the universe. It's tough, right? We come out of a human, a woman, and in a way, we're always trying to get back in.
Are we?
We're trying to find home. And our original home.
Ah, so that's that feeling. I felt that big time when I think I mentioned to you, and some of the listeners may have heard. I did a 7-day fast, like an
Yeah,
enzyme fast, and for me, that emptiness, right, of not putting like the food in my body, and something I've been really feeling into over the past 2 years has been my relationship to food when I emotionally eat and binge eating. And doing the fast, I was able to discern the difference, probably for the first time, like truly the difference of what it feels like to stuff my feelings with food versus be mentally hungry. Because there were times when I was mentally hungry, but it was like, no, I'm fine. But then there are other times, most of it, when it was this deep existential angst that for me felt like suicidal ideation. But I think it's easier and more healthy to say existential angst, which it was the feeling of longing for home, but like an anxiety, not knowing what that longing is and was.
Dude, so well put. And for men, think about that. In our most vulnerable times, our first, like it's almost like a physical reactiveness is I need to be held. I need, like, for me, it's my wife now, right? Things get really funky. My wife is the surrogate mom, for better, for worse, right? Like it's, oh, you don't want to marry your mom, but we've got a tremendous relationship, but we all have our vulnerable, our weakest points. And I think for men, and so when you look at all the archetypes, the goddesses, Madonnas, those are all created by men as, places of sanctuary. And the feminine, Mother Earth is feminine. That's our sanctuary, right? But you're right, when we get confused and super vulnerable, existential angst, I used to call it cosmic despondency. We go right to the original, and that's I want mommy. I want to be held. I mean, all the research when men are dying in war and stuff, they're calling out for mom. They're calling out for the eternal mom. They're calling out for their current, but they're calling out for like Mother Earth mom, Angel's mom. Because that's the nurturing energy. The yin is the nurturing.
If you're looking for a powerful and transformative experience for your next event, consider bringing in Sam Kabert as a keynote speaker. Sam's message of soul life balance and his expertise in mental health and mindfulness resonate deeply with audiences. He not only inspires with his story, but also offers practical tools like breathwork to help attendees regulate their emotions and reconnect with themselves. You can even have Sam lead a guided breathwork journey, creating a truly unforgettable experience. To learn more or book Sam for your event, check out the link in the show notes to book a call with Sam now.
Yeah, and this is another thing I've been fascinated and passionate about recently is like yin and yang and the men's and archetypal energies of masculine and feminine. I mean, I've been really into this for quite some time, but what I've been starting to see over the past few months is men's work means something very different to deeply spiritual people than it does to personal development type folks. And I'm still like, do you know David Data's work?
Oh, Way of the Spirit Man is the great. Every man should read that book. Period. Stop everything. Get that book.
So that's what's fascinating to me because 4 years ago I tried reading The Way of the Superior Man, and I was like, I can't get into this. I tried reading No More Mr. Nice Guy, couldn't get into it. And for me, I actually started a men's group back there called The Balance Man, and even the title itself, The Way of the Superior Man, I'm like, ugh,
Bad title.
this.
It's a terrible title.
Well, so this is the thing. Like, I feel like there's two sides of men's work where, I came from kind of more, we could call it like bro culture, or alpha or meathead or wherever, where I needed to
Yeah.
soften and like get in touch with the feminine and my inner world. And then there's this other side of men's work that's like rite of passage of boy to man and like no more Mr. Nice Guy, superior man. I'm like, obviously those are titles, but I
Yeah.
did do a little bit of engaging with those type of books, and I was just like, this isn't where I'm at in my journey. So
Yeah.
I'm curious what comes up for you.
Yeah. For me, the message in David's book, Way of the Spirit Man, again, terrible title, was that you have to surrender to the feminine.
Hmm.
That's truly what it is. That summarizes that entire book. Like great examples, like us men, like why we're still boys, why we never grow up. Like if something really good happens to me, or I'm doing something for the house, for my wife, I am like, oh, I want to let her know. So she rewards me with her attention. And it's like, don't do it for her. Do it for true maturity and growth is like be in your own body, be in your own world, have your own experiences as a man, and let the feminine come to you when she wants to come to you. Don't advertise it. Don't do stuff that's good for her because you want attention. That's what Daddy's saying. Like
Yeah.
one of his classic quotes is like, you could be Jeff Bezos, you could be the most respected, money, you could be everything, right? And then you do something stupid. You're a douchebag. You're an asshole. And you did all these great things. That one asshole-y thing deletes all that in one moment, right? We're like, that's so unfair. I'm such a good dad. I'm all like, yeah, but don't be an asshole. Don't be immature. Don't be immature. Be present. Don't be grumpy. And if you're grumpy, get out of the house, right? I tell men, grow the fuck up. Like, listen to your wife. Yes, she's going to be overreactive. When the lava flows down the mountain, Sam, are you going to stand and go, come on, lava shouldn't flow? I'm going to stand right here. Let the lava flow. My buddy's like, oh, my wife asked me for a divorce. She hates me. Yeah, my wife has asked me for a divorce 600 times. She's thrown shit at me. She's the only person I've ever had to defend myself from. Never been in a fight. Days but young. Like, grow up. Let the feminine have its flush, have its out. It's Mother Nature. So that's what I take. That's, to me, essentially what Daddy's saying is allow the feminine to break the boy open, wake the boy up, and come back around. Be present. It's hard. Yeah, it's hard, Sam. It's really hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's been about a 3,000 or 4,000 year kind of warrior, the Piscean era. God was a guy. God's a fucking guy. That's like only in the last 3 or 4 years, 3,000 to 4,000 years that there's a guy with a beard is God. He is. What are you talking about? It's Mother Nature. It's the sun, right?
Yeah.
Not to dispel, not talking about really, but we've been inculcated and immersed in this conquer, divide, colonize, not just outer world, but our inner world is, it's for me. I got to be in me. And that's a yang. Those are all yang experiences. It's all rational. It's all logical. That's all what's breaking down as the Aquarian age, which is an air sign, is opening up.
Yeah, and this is the part where there was a disconnect between myself and a few friends that are like big followers of Data's work. I was explaining
over masculinizing, right? Like,
well, I'm curious because I don't know his work, so I'm just curious because everything I've ever learned about the masculine, feminine, and again, not genitalia, but archetypal energy, is that the yin is equated to the feminine, and the yin is equated to the inner world, and the masculine is equated to the yang or yang, which is the outer world. But then the friends with Data's work were telling me it's the opposite, and I actually started to gaslight myself and just be like, wait, everything that I've learned, everything I'm teaching, and I'm like, because I want to be open and just like make sure like I'm on the right page. And I'm like, and I've asked so many people and they're like, no, you're right. And I'm like, well, what exactly is it that Data's teaching where it's getting lost in translation when I'm explaining it to those people and they're explaining something else to me where we're not seeing eye to eye, you know?
Great question. I don't know how anything could be misinterpreted like that, but you look at the ancient symbol, it's dark side of the mountain. It's Chinese. That yin yang symbology is Chinese, which is dark side of the mountain, light side of the mountain, right? Yang is active. We're all yin yang. We're all everything. Every cell, proton, neutron, electron, right? Everything's got friction. Everything has two sides. That's what the 3D plane is. When you get to 4D and 5D, time and space merge. So there is no yin yang. You're just everything. Yeah. So I haven't followed it. I've just read that book through and through, and I've quoted it, I don't know, a lot. Yeah. And I've sent it to guys. But you're right. I think if you come with a certain construct, like I realized early on, my life was going to be absolutely better no matter what if my wife was in it, whether we stayed together or not. Why? Because I know that she could hold space. The ancient symbol of the feminine is what? A circle. All the Native Americans, when you do ceremonies, the man steps into the hoop. The hoop is the feminine. The hoop is the yin. And so I knew my life was going to be, I wasn't going to be able to complete my life without that human being in it, that woman. She could take the bullshit. She could see the boy. She could see the warrior, and she could see everything in between. That's what the feminine can do. They can intuit that Sam has this wonderful conquering, be successful part of you. You got that vulnerable boy. You got that questioning teenager, all those layers, all those ancient parts of you. The feminine intuition typically can see that where we can't. Now, our moms, we got over-mommed. Mediterranean, the Catholics, the Jews, like we get over-mommed. We get, like my mom didn't want to let me go. I had to break up with my mom when I got married, literally break up. Like in therapy, the therapist looked at me and she's like, this is in 1998, Jan 98. Wow. 27 years ago. Therapist looked at me, she said, Bill, you got to break up with your mom. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm 33 years old. My mom was still sending me socks and underwear from New Jersey, to London.
Mhm.
And my wife's like, what, you kidding me? What are you, how old are you, Bill? Are you 14? Are you 12? Like, I didn't know. I didn't know until I was told. And then, you know, they say when you perceive something and it really goes in, you have a cellular whoop, whoop.
Mm.
Like I've done body work, tons of body work on people, and they have an insight. You can feel their body lighten up when they get a new piece of information. I'm like, holy cow. I literally went home, called my mom and said, love you, mom, we got to break up. She's like, oh. But anyway, it's a great topic. The yin yang,
That's a
like
good story.
it's a lot of men struggle with the fact of surrendering to nature, of surrendering to body. Of how do you do that? In meditation, in yoga, in therapy. It's really the only three ways to fully surrender. People are like, I play golf and I'm meditative. Nah. I go for a long hike. Yeah, that's good. Sit afterwards. Why? Because the heart has old sorrow, old joy, old longing, and you're holding on to it. And you can't finish your life and feel your life unless that shit comes up. Period. There's no other way.
And I love your message of silence, and I absolutely want to get into that, but also life cycles, where we're at with the Aquarian age, some woo stuff. We're going to be all over the place, and hopefully you'll be back on the podcast as a frequent guest, because I feel like we have a really good rapport and a lot of different things. So we are, if you guys haven't already noticed, this is going to cover a lot of ground. Having said all that, like to help not just men, but people in general with so much stress and so much chaoticness that's going on in the world, we need to find different ways to slow down and to find stillness. And one of the things that's been so beneficial for me is working with nootropics, specifically Magic Mind. Have you heard of Magic Mind?
I think I have.
It's this tiny little shot. It's a little tiny little bottle, and it's got all kinds of stuff that's great for cognition, energy, less stress. It's got adaptogens, different sorts of mushrooms, and it helps to reduce stress, have more focus.
Wow.
And yeah, it's just been incredible. So they are kind enough to send me a supply so I could do this little 7-day challenge. And for anyone interested that would like to try Magic Mind for themselves, you can go to their website, find the link in the show notes, and just enter in promo code SamSoulSeeker20 for 48% off your first subscription. Then Magic Mind's pretty legit. So I highly recommend you guys checking that out, which there's actually something really new from them too that I'm stoked on. It's called Magic Mind Sleep. And get this, Bill, it's got kava, GABA, 5-HTP, and valerian in it. And then when I first heard about valerian root a few years ago, it reminded me of Game of Thrones, Valerian Steel. So I thought that was funny. But GABA is something that is so important to supplement if you're having trouble sleeping, especially after you've done psychedelic journeys, like say with Bufo. So the fact that there's GABA and 5-HTP and kava in it is really cool. So go to the show notes, find the link, Sam Soulseeker 20 for 48% off with that, Bill. So, you know, it's slowing down and finding stillness and in this chaotic world, like your meditation that you sent me, that's 12 minutes long, that is in the show notes as well. Guys, whether you're an experienced meditator or you have trouble meditating, highly recommend checking this out. And Bill, tell us why they should check it out, because I thought that was fantastic.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Let's see. Where do I start? So all we have is our body, Sam. Our mind works hard. It's up there in the neocortex. We have 3 parts of our brain. The youngest part's only 2 million years old. The reptilian's about 50 million, 100 million. We spend all this time rotating 50,000 thoughts every day. How many are actually worth ruminating on and spending time on? Oh, and by the way, as we're doing that, we're using up blood, we're using up oxygen. And what we're doing is we're actually, the neocortex, Sam, is designed not to feel. There's actually a spot in the middle of our brain called the reticular activating system, and it's a traffic cop. And you have old emotions about yourself at 15, whatever's coming up in you all the time. There's 40,000 brain neurons in the heart. So those neurons want to introduce old emotions so you can process them and be done with them. Otherwise, they're consuming energy. Heart attack. Men don't die of heart attacks. They die of a broken heart.
Mhm.
If I can't convince a man to sit quietly and tell him, I guarantee you, here's the science, it's going to help your heart, then it's all good. So why do we sit quietly? Number one, the physical. The benefits of sitting quietly are inimpeachable. It's ancient. When I started doing it 28 years ago, there wasn't all this research. Think about that. It's almost like the early epoch of, the 80s and 90s. They were doing it, but all this research since the mid 90s, that's the most important thing. Why don't people do it? Because old emotions come up. And by the way, it takes 10 minutes for your rational mind, this thing that's doing 50,000 data dumps a day. 50,000, Sam. You're going to have 50,000 thoughts today. Is that crazy?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
80% from the day before, 90% are negative. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, because it's an old tape. It's a
Mhm.
great tape, but it's an old tape. And so really what we have to do is the only way to slow down that tape is literally physically slow down. And once we get to 10 minutes, this is the science. Don't take it from me. Do your research. It takes 10 minutes for the neocortex to signal to the limbic, the heart, hippocampus, belly, hey, it's safe. I'm going to relax a little bit. So now, take 11 minutes in, your neocortex is now allowing the body to go into parasympathetic. And that's when all the good shit happens. We go to alpha. It's called alpha. Beta is this. We're in beta right now. The squirrel out there, he's an alpha. The tree, alpha. The ionosphere is at alpha, 7 to 10 cycles a second. Those are the molecules in the air in the ionosphere are doing 7 to 10. Right now, you and I are doing 12 to 15. We have to be beta. We have to be rational. But we got to get out of that, Sam. We have to get out of beta and go to alpha. That's the reason. Everything else unfolds from there. But again, I could give you examples of 30 people said, I've tried, I can't do it. Why? Because they're like, I'm thinking when I'm meditating, that's fine. Let it happen. Let it all come up. They're like, well, that's not right. I heard you have to find peace and chant. I'm like, no, just sit. 10 minutes, sit. But that seems like a waste of time. I don't have time. If you don't have time, this isn't my saying. If you don't have time to meditate for 10 minutes, you should be doing it for 2 hours.
Yeah.
If you don't have time to meditate for 10 minutes, you should be doing it for an hour. That's how effing crazy that is. People are like, I don't know how to do it. Oh, you know how to do this? What? That's it. I'm meditating right now. It's a terrible word, meditito. It means to actually come back, sitting quietly. It's a great word. I learned that one 28 years ago. Sitting quietly is the best way to put it, or just sitting. But that's why, Sam,
I love sitting quietly. That's a good point of the
much
word,
better.
sometimes the association. For me, breath work has been my saving grace, which is
Yep.
why I teach breath work. And, I find that for myself and a lot of people that I don't love labels, but say high performers or whatever, people that are on the go and visionary leaders, a lot of times we feel like we don't have the time. And the truth is, to your point, we need to slow down to speed up. And the way to build that time in, or kind of get the body to settle down, is with some breath work. And after just a couple minutes of breath work, it doesn't need to be long, then we can sit quietly. Just it gets us into our body. So for all those reasons, I've typically gone breath work, and then at the end be like, okay, now I'm going to add a few minutes of meditation at the end.
Yeah, because the breath is the passage in, right? So where does the word spiritus come from? Latin.
Right. Yeah.
To breathe, right? So let's just, another example. Two of the greatest thinkers probably in the last 150 years, Thomas Edison.
Mm-hmm.
We can thank him for this election, although he stole it. And Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs had one book next to his bed his entire life called Autobiography of a Yogi. Greatest book you ever read. Autobiography written in 1946. Meditated every day. Guy was crazy, but he's brilliant. He dies. So his whole thing was meditation. He'd been doing it and walking around without shoes on to ground himself, which is super healthy. So he was so into meditation. When he died, at his funeral, there was 500 people. When they walked out, they got a wooden box. What was in that wooden box, Sam?
The book.
The book. The whole book is why you should be sitting. Thomas Edison. Every morning, you know what he did?
I didn't
On his
know
front
that.
porch?
Yeah.
He rocked in his chair. He had a rocking chair in New Jersey, and he had a handful of metal balls from his factory. And he would rock back and forth, get into a meditative state. If he fell asleep, his arm would fall down, the balls would hit the wooden floor, wake him up. He didn't want to be asleep. He didn't want to go from alpha to delta. He wanted to get out of beta, go into alpha. And I think he has 1,000 patents and is the greatest thinker, probably one of the top 10 greatest thinkers of all time. So those guys are smart. They were doing it. Like, what else do we need to get? What else do we need to do? And the reason why I'm such a vigilante for meditation is because men need to get vulnerable. Because when a man gets vulnerable and open, he has the ability to do so much with it because he is yang based. He's active based, right? Think of like as you get more and more vulnerable, your business gets better. It gets more enriched because you're more tuned in. Like it's a home run. It's free.
Yeah.
Self-awareness is free. It's hard though, Sam, because we've got old emotions that we just don't want to remember.
Yeah, it's so interesting because hearing you say that, like for me, it's the distractions. Like I love going within and feeling the shadow work and all of this. And sometimes it's just like you just feel like you're being pulled in different kinds of ways, or I'm having right now in this moment, I would say today, at least we talked about this before we hit record. I took a call at 9 a.m. and my rule of thumb is typically I don't take calls before 11, maybe 10. But that throws me off. And that's why I have that rule, because if I don't make that time for myself in the morning, then it's going to affect the rest of the day. I got off routine today. I didn't have time to walk to the beach, ground, go outside, went straight to the gym, pump iron, be like, I need to get my workout in, and then come home, rush. There's this call and then the next one. And then all of a sudden it's like, you shove food in your mouth because you're like, I need
you need calories.
Yeah. And then it's like, now I'm too full to meditate or to breathe. I'll do it later, and it's like, oh man, this is the exact type of day that I don't like having. So it's a good reminder of being like, this is why I have these rules in place, so that next time I'm making an exception to the rule, holding myself accountable or building those times in, or just not making those exceptions,
Yes. So the reason why the morning is really interesting time, and there's the circadian rhythm of the day and different parts of the body are woken up. So the melatonin starts kicking in at 9:30 at night, and then it stops at about 7:30, right? That's just science. So you active melatonin, pineal pituitary gland, and then melatonin's the base of serotonin. Serotonin's the happy hormone. Where's 95% of the serotonin built, Sam? Where's 95% of the serotonin in your body built, which is the happy hormone?
Your brain? You tell me.
Gut. In your belly.
Oh, that makes sense.
Like, to be happy, we eat cake because it makes us feel happy for that moment, right? My point is, the reason why the morning is such a interesting and powerful time is because we're still coming out of melatonin-induced life in sleeping. So 8:39, we're still coming out of that phase. That's why I always tell people, have that cup of coffee, but wait till 8, wait till 8:15. Now, I'm not always doing that. There's times where I have to get up early and I want that cup. But it's the time we're in the fourth dimension, leaving the fourth to get back down to third, essentially. And so that's what throws people off. But yeah, I wouldn't beat yourself up for not sitting. But no, there's also a reason. That's why you and I have talked about it. There's always a reason why people won't sit. Examining that reason is the work.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
That's the work. How can you not sit? If we throw the science hard enough, it should force you into the chair, but it doesn't, because we're emotion based. There hasn't been an activity in the human condition that wasn't driven by an emotion. Everything's driven by emotion. Highly rational people, highly left brain, whether the earth signs, you're earth, they're like, no, there's no emotion here. Well, the emotion's behind it. You don't know why you're doing that activity, but it's based on a feeling. It's not based on a thought. All your thoughts came from your feelings. Mm-hmm. So your neocortex base is built on the foundation of your limbic neuron, heart, emotion, intuition, which is all yin. Mm-hmm. But we've over-yanged our communities. we yang, we get rational, we kill things, we burn things, and we destroy. That's all changing. It's all changing. That's the beautiful thing. That's why sitting now as well, which you and I talk about, is to sit today for 10 minutes is like sitting 20 years ago for an hour or an hour and a half, because there's so much light, so many photons hitting Mother Earth right now that a 10-minute sit gets you quickly aligned, which again means emotions are going to come up. They're coming up. They're going to find you.
Yeah.
Your sense of self will find you. Your joy, compassion, and sorrow will find you.
Have you ever felt overwhelmed by emotions and unsure how to move through them? Sam created the Breath Club to help you find calm and clarity. In this free online community, Sam teaches how to regulate your nervous system through breathwork and process emotions effectively. Did you know that most emotions only last 90 seconds when you fully allow yourself to feel them? This is called the 90-second rule, and it's a powerful tool backed by science for emotional healing. Each week, Sam hosts live calls to guide breathwork practices and create real connection. You'll also get access to an online course and pre-recorded breathwork videos. The link to join is in the show notes.
Yeah, tell us more about there being so much light in the photons hitting Mother Earth right now. That's fascinating.
Yeah, so you can just Google precession of the equinox. So Mother Earth goes through this. So Mother Earth's spinning around the sun, the galaxy is spinning, and Mother Earth is spinning around the galaxy as she's going around the sun, right? It's one of these things. And it takes 26,000 years, 25,000 years for her to do one oblong circular rotation. And so she's back to where she was 26,000 years ago, just like the Saturn return. When you turn 28, 29, Saturn's sitting exactly where he was. Jupiter takes 12 years. Everything is moving around in cycles. So we've been in this photon belt. Really, it's like a 30-year period where it's this transition out of epochs, and Mother Earth goes through these. So 26,000 years, divide that by 12, you get those numbers like 2,100 year cycles. So we're leaving the Piscean era, 2012, and the next 2,100 years is the air sign Aquarian. Just as you put the astronomy print into the galaxy and go, okay, here are the slices of the pie, Mother Earth's going here. So we left Pisces and now we're in Aquarius. We don't have to get into those details, but right now we're in this photon belt that we'll be in for probably, I think, another 15 to 20 years. And that's why everything's blowing open, right? There's nothing different today that wasn't happening 100 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, 20 years ago, except now we have the internet and there's no hiding. Air sign, Aquarius, equal, open, egalitarian, wholly new. And time is faster. Look at the Mayan research. Mayan said, as we finish this one epoch and go into the next 2,000-year cycle, time speeds up. Time is demonstratively faster right now than it was 10 years ago, 25 years ago, or when I was your age. It was like olden times. It must have been like black and white compared to now. Think how fast things are moving right now. New technology, new awareness. They're still finding new species. Anyway, photons, a lot of light. Get in that light, get in harmony with it, and let it light your ass up. And it's going to bring old emotions. That's the key to life. That's the finishing. Our job is to finish our life. And what does that mean? Robert Monroe Institute down in Virginia. To finish your life, Sam, means to take everything in your non-physical self, everything in your dream space, in your sense of self, taking all that wisdom and bringing it into your body and putting it onto the 3D plane. That's why you're here. You're an interloper. You're an in-betweener. Human beings were built, it's a whole other topic, to take all non-physical and make it physical.
Okay, no, I want to get into that whole other topic about human beings being built to do that. Before we do, yeah, that sounds fun. Yeah, channeling. What we're talking about here is channeling, and meditation, breath work, even magic Maya, as I mentioned earlier, nootropics. All of these different things are different ways to become that vessel. And when we get into that flow state or the zone, and we're channeling through us, like you can feel it. Every single person listening to this is nodding right now, being like, oh yeah, I remember when, or I do this and that gets me into it. Like there's no denying that. So in terms of human beings being built for this, here we go. Let's go down that rabbit hole. We're getting into
So,
like the
so
Martians and
yeah,
the
well,
Anunnaki and things like
well,
that.
yeah. The answer to all that is yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm going to keep it high level mostly. If you think about mammals right now, Homo sapiens sapien, we don't have hair. We actually can't be out in nature without stuff to protect us in nature. There's something different about us, right? There's 40 million species. I don't know how many mammals there are on the planet. A lot of mammals. A million mammals. We're the only mammal that can't that there's only one strain. There's only Homo sapiens sapien. There's different colors. Only one strain. That is not seemingly biologically natural because every species, I think there's 20,000 bird species. Now I know those aren't mammals. My point is there's something different about Homo sapiens sapien. And is Mother Earth a amazing playground and testing ground? They say what's going on in Mother Earth affects everything in the planets, everything in the solar system, everything in the universe. Because apparently this is like the perfect environment for friction to build more awareness. Like perfect amount of carbon, a perfect amount of air, oxygen, hydrogen, helium, all the things. The Mayans said it started 16 billion years ago and it keeps going. In the Hindu tradition, you do 1 billion lifetimes, Sam, and then you just keep going. Pop. Like all the ancients, for them, they knew all the ancients had symbology from spaceships. They talk about the Pleiadians. They talk about, they say the Bible, this was mind-blowing last year, Paul Wallace, that the Bible's basically a story about ETs, about all these different Elohims are different non-humans or partially humans that were doing battle.
Yeah.
So given all that, doesn't really matter. What about today? Who am I today? We have this tremendous ability to perceive, and we dream every night, and we leave the 3D plane every night, whether people believe their dreams or not, remember their dreams or not. We go to the 4D. We go somewhere else. I was with Trump last night in my dream, hanging out. Doesn't matter. It's so we're connected to everything. We have the ability to access everything. And then we wake up, and now the challenge is, what do I do with my inner world? What do I do with it today? That's the job. What do I do with it? Do I be additive? Do I be neutral? Or do I be deleterious? Do I add? Do I hold space? Well, the only way I believe you can do that, and I've learned, I got to know myself. And if I'm in a good space, good sense space, good feeling space, I can be additive. If I'm grumpy, tired, and worthless, I'm worthless. That's being present. That's being vulnerable. That's being aware. That's what we're here to do, Sam. And we change the world in the silence of belief, joy, light emanating out of us. Right? When you see a beautiful flower, you're like, wow, that's our job, to be a flower, to be a tree. Everything in the planet, I'm looking out, is reaching for light. The bush, the tomato plants, everything's reaching for light. And they bring that light down into their roots. That's the human experience. That's why we're here.
Yeah, I love that.
Crazy.
Yeah, it is.
But that's why sitting's so important, because how can you absorb when you're active? That tree isn't running. It's waiting. It's calling, right? Trees don't compete. Yeah, they compete a little bit, but they find a way, right? Two trees, they do this.
Well, when we slow down, we start to become one with nature. We start to notice how the wind shifts. We start to notice how the squirrels or the crows or wherever you live, like those animals start to come closer to you. And I mean, squirrels, I think you mentioned earlier, did you say squirrels are operating in alpha?
Everything in Mother Earth is operating at alpha. And that's why sitting is so key, because you're basically going to her channel, right? When you go to alpha enough, it's hard to be mean to Mother Earth, because you realize, oh, I'm in that same channeled space. I'm in that same softer, right brain, emotive, alpha state.
A couple months ago, I was microdosing with mushrooms. It was just a proper microdose. I'm off the protocol now, but sometimes I'll be like back on the protocol. Um, and usually I don't really notice too much, but I was in the backyard and I just had this interaction with the squirrel where there's always squirrels in my backyard. But it just paused and it stopped and it was looking at me and I was looking at it and we were connecting and I was already feeling aligned and connected with nature, which is why I brought this up. And that's just a beautiful experience in itself. But then the second thing that happened was like, I really tuned in with that squirrel and was connecting with it. And it felt like, for me at least, that squirrel wouldn't have been operating in alpha because it felt like it was operating at least in the sympathetic nervous system. And if you look at the squirrel's behavior, how they're like they're always on edge, and then you look at their hair always standing up. Like, this is a question about intuition, right? Because like intuitively I was feeling, wow, these animals are always in fight or flight. And I'm like, I just started gaslighting myself. I'm like, I don't know if scientifically that's right or not, but that's what it feels like right now. Like, look at their hair, feel their energy, look at how their movements. Like, what do you think about that?
So they are an alpha just in terms of so, but they have a natural state where they high alert, no alert, high alert. You can be high
Ah,
alert alpha. Think about that.
makes
You
sense.
get
Yeah,
deep
yeah,
enough, right? I can get highly aware of this really intense emotion around a subject matter, but I'm still at the slower brain pace. And I mean, there's so much science and research in terms of like the archetypes that the squirrels, they're always looking for shadows, right? So because they're like one talon away from being torn off the earth, so that's their natural state, high alert. But then they spend the rest of their day chilling in alpha, totally
yeah.
chilling, not worrying about the Fed or
Yeah.
war,
Well,
right?
and for humans, for everyone listening, we're operating in beta, like you said, and there's three stages or phases of beta, and there's high beta, which is like that super stress. And what's fascinating is like the research and the studies that go show when someone finally slows down after a lifetime of just operating in high beta, how dis-ease will come about in the body because they're no longer operating in that state. So we think like, oh yeah, no, I can handle all the stress, and we just gotta keep going, keep going, keep going. And then something happens, whatever it is, where all of a sudden now like they have a moment to pause and then everything falls apart.
Yeah, yeah. Especially guys that retire and then suddenly.
Hmm.
Yeah, because the yang energy, the rationalizing energy can carry the day, can carry people for a long, long time. But at some point, the body sends some messages saying something's got to give, right? Something has to happen.
And the
Um,
body is doing that, and we can access that in the stillness and the silence and the peace and quiet. So I love your message. We're getting about at time, Bill, and this has been awesome. I think a lot of times with new guests, I shouldn't say a lot of times because I don't always have returning guests, but there are times where like we just cover a ton of different topics, and then it's like, all right, this is a good like foundational episode, and then next time we're going to like double click on one of these areas. So with that said,
but
I'd love to have you back on the
please,
podcast. Yeah, absolutely. And for
as my
anyone,
wife says, I'm incapable of small talk. That's all I want to talk about.
yeah, yeah, me too. Me
Yeah.
too. The same way. And I think that's common when for anyone listening that's newer on the path of remembering and acceptance and self-discovery, all of these type of things, where it's like we just are like, oh my God, I've just been no wonder why I was feeling so disconnected from society because it was repulsive to have all those conversations, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And now it's like, oh, I just always want to go deep, Yeah.
Totally. Yes.
So I
That's
get it.
the challenge. That's why there's always a warning label underneath, you know, if you're going to start opening up
Red
your
pill.
heart,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, be
Yeah. If
careful.
you're going red pill. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
The warning signs of or the red pill for sure.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
feel
exactly. That's the red pill. Yeah.
yeah.
Totally.
So for anyone listening that wants to connect with Bill directly, check out the show notes. You can find his website. You can find his book there. It's all in the show notes. And then I also linked his 12-minute meditation that we talked about. I've sat
12 to
with that
12.
Several. I mean, I'm a yoga instructor, guys, a certified yoga instructor, breathwork facilitator. I've held space in over 1,000 ceremonies. I meditate and all that. And still listening to Bill's 12-minute meditation several times, I was like, oh, this is really good. And one of the things I appreciate about Bill that I think about myself as well, hopefully, is this message of like soul life balance, where we can be connected to the divine, our inner world, our higher self, all these type of things, but also grounded and move through the world. And we have like there isn't a lot of like fluff, of just it's all light and love. You can hear the embodiment and integrity of actually acting and being that way, of being in alignment, if you will. So I really appreciate that about you, Bill.
I thank you, Sam. I appreciate that. And either I read it or heard this 25 years ago. The Buddha says we can meditate all day in our ashram. You got to bring your practice to the marketplace, quote unquote. You got to bring your practice to the marketplace. And that means being aware in our community with other mammals, with other humans. That's where the work is. But you gotta come to the cushion. You gotta open up. You gotta get vulnerable. And then you're like, oh. And then you see everyone else is going through the exact same thing, different shades of it. Everybody's sad. Everybody's longing. Everybody's joyous. Everybody's compassionate. Every single human being. I think there's 7 major emotions. You realize everybody's going through the same thing. That guy just cut you off. He's having an experience just like you have. Mm-hmm. There is no difference. It's the great equalizer. But we have to get out of our rational self and get into our feeling body, period. If there's another way, please tell me.
Breathwork.
Breathwork. Breathwork is the path.
The same
breath
point.
is the path.
Yeah. No, I was kidding.
100%.
Cool. Well, thanks so much, Bill. We'll see you again soon.
Love it. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode to the very end. I hope you enjoyed this podcast just as much as I did. Bill is absolutely going to be a returning guest on this show. In fact, after this recording, typically right after the recording, I'll go in and do my edits, and I'll do the intro and outro that you're listening to right now. But I actually was so inspired that I took a break and meditated for almost 20 minutes. And here I am now, after having meditated, coming on to share with you guys just how good it feels to find that stillness. So I hope this podcast inspired you to find that stillness. And as always, if you want to go deeper with me, the best way to do so is just to join the free breath club. The link to that is in the show notes. And if you want to check out Magic Mind, that's our mental performance shot that I was mentioning earlier in this podcast, go to the show notes for 48% off of your first subscription. Magic Mind can help to reduce stress and increase focus. It's full of adaptogens, mushroom nootropics. And if you're someone who is trying to get better sleep, I definitely recommend checking out Magic Mind Sleep, because it has kava, GABA, 5-HTP, valerian root, amongst other ingredients that are all really good to help with your sleep. So other than that, I will see you on the next episode of the Soul Seeker podcast. Thank you so much for listening to the very end. I hope you dug this podcast just as much as I enjoyed it. If you got anything at all, please, if you could just do me a favor and leave a 5-star review wherever you listen to this podcast, it helps the show grow. So thank you for considering to leave a review. If you want to go deeper with Soltara or Elan, you can find the links to connect with them in the show notes. And if you want to work with me, the best way to work with me, the easiest way to work with me is the free way, and that's by joining the Breath Club. The link to the Breath Club is in the show notes. And also know that I'm available for one-on-one support, that is coaching and guidance, as well as keynotes and breathwork journeys for conferences and events. Thank you so much, and I will see you on the next episode of The Soul Seeker.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.